Lionel thought it was just a phone call from his daughter, until he realized she'd forgotten to hang up. From the kitchen radio came her voice, calm and certain, saying she'd handle the paperwork to move his house under her name. He didn't shout. He didn't warn her. He just decided that if they were planning his future, he'd write the ending himself. One sale, one signature, and one lesson about boundaries and consequence. Lionel Gaines had never been a man of extravagance. At 64, the retired high school math teacher still paid every bill with a pen check and filed each receipt into color-coded folders he'd kept since Reagan's first term. He lived alone now, in the same Atlanta suburb home where he and his late wife had raised their daughter, buried a dog, and nursed through cancer with trembling hands and gospel radio playing low. The kitchen clock ticked gently behind him, each second a reminder that the morning was still his. Steam rose from the black coffee he poured into his chipped, world's best dad mug, the one Simone had made for him in 6th grade. He flipped on the gospel station, adjusted the dial until the static gave way to a soft choir, and settled into his seat with a stack of monthly bills. Pencil in hand, he began marking his expenses. "Morning, baby," he said softly, eyes resting on the empty chair across from him. The one that still pulled slightly to the left, worn into habit from years of his wife leaning across the table to check his math, even though she trusted every number. Outside, a breeze stirred the magnolia tree she used to prune with gloved hands. Inside, his world had compressed to these small rituals: pencil scratches, coffee drip, and the soft creak of his chair. Still, they were enough to feel the day was his, if not full, at least whole. A framed photo leaned against the window. His daughter, Simone Gaines, 37, smiled stiffly beside her husband, Malcolm Ortiz. Malcolm, slick in a pinstripe suit, had that polished look Lionel never trusted. Something in the eyes that measured more than they met. The smile Simone wore didn't quite reach her eyes. "You two look happy. Hope it's real," he murmured, brushing dust from the frame as sunlight caught the particles in a slow, spinning ballet. He meant to call her later, routine more than need. Their conversations lately had grown formal, clipped at the edges like her business emails. Simone worked corporate finance downtown, numbers on her screen all day, but increasingly scattered in life. She hadn't visited in weeks, but before he could reach for his phone, it rang. Her name blinked on the screen. "Hey, Daddy," came Simone's breathless voice, layered with the rhythm of footsteps and distant traffic. "Just checking in. I've got meetings all day. Everything good with you?" "All good, baby girl," he said. "Coffee, gospel, bills, same as yesterday." "Okay, love you. Talk soon," she said quickly. "Take care, baby girl." He tapped the red button and set the phone on the counter. Or so he thought. The radio swelled into the next hymn, notes trailing like incense, masking the faint beep that would have told him the call hadn't ended. His hand moved back to the bills, to the numbers he still trusted. But then, from the counter behind him, voices leaked through the kitchen like cold air under a door. A man's voice, Malcolm's. "Just get him to sign the quitclaim, then we can use the property as collateral." Lionel's pencil stopped mid-stroke. Simone's voice followed. "He doesn't need to know the details. If we switch it back after the loan clears, it won't even touch him." Quitclaim. Lionel knew that word. Years ago, a notary had explained it when they signed a form for his wife's treatment authorization. A quitclaim deed was a fast-track legal document used to transfer ownership. No money exchanged, no questions asked. It removed someone from title, sometimes forever. He turned slightly, the hum of the refrigerator steady beneath the rising voices. "If he just signs, we can use it as collateral," Simone said. Malcolm added, "He'll thank you later." Lionel set the mug down with care, but the tremor in his fingers rippled the coffee to the rim. His pencil returned to the page. Slowly, deliberately, he drew a line through the column he'd just balanced. His breath didn't quicken, his jaw didn't clench, but his mind was already rearranging itself, order forming from betrayal. "Bank extends the Midtown loan," Malcolm was saying. "Then we switch it back. Simple. Midtown." That was the condo Simone had bought with Malcolm, an ambitious 2-bedroom with skyline views and an HOA, Homeowners Association, fee that made Lionel's head spin. Midtown property values were volatile, and from what little she'd admitted, their loan-to-value ratio, or LTV, was tight. Lionel had taught his students that LTV was the ratio of a loan to the appraised value of the property. If it crept too high, lenders got nervous. Risk climbed. Collateral became king. He thought of Simone as a child, barefoot in the yard, helping her mother paint the back fence. The brush too big for her hands, laughter flying like pollen. His wife's voice had floated to him from the porch, half joking, half serious. "Keep this house safe when your daddy grows old." Now those words echoed in a new pitch. Not memory. Warning. "You kept it too well, baby," he whispered. He reached for a yellow legal pad, scribbled down the exact time of the call, and underlined it. Proof. Not just of what he heard, but that he heard it live. Then, for the first time in weeks, he turned off the gospel station. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was sharp. "All right," he said to no one. "If that's how it's gonna be." A knock startled him. The door creaked open before he could answer. "Smells like someone forgot to eat," came the voice of Delilah D. Brown, his late wife's sister. 58, hair salon owner, heart toughened by years of loss and hustle. She held out a foil-wrapped bundle. "Sweet potatoes, still warm." Lionel managed a smile. "You always know when to feed trouble." Dee stepped in, frowning as she noticed the phone's glowing screen on the counter. "You forgot to hang up?" she said, eyeing the call timer. "Maybe I forgot more than that," he replied, voice steady now. The doorbell rang again. Mr. Henry, his next-door neighbor for 30 years, stood holding a bank envelope with Lionel's name misprinted. "Mailman slipping," Henry said, then paused. "Phone's still talking, Lionel." "Yeah," Lionel said, taking the envelope. "It is." Night crept in slowly. The radio stayed off. The chair across from him remained empty. He didn't replay the call. He didn't need to. 2 voices had spoken. And now, 2 people had seen the call still ticking. The quiet had broken. What came next would be math he'd never taught in class. Lionel woke before sunrise. He hadn't slept much. The coffee pot hadn't even started dripping yet when he found himself tracing the hallway walls with his fingers, walking slow, like memory might shift if he didn't move carefully. The house was quiet, same as always, but something about it felt thinner now. Fragile, like everything inside had started aging faster overnight. He stopped by the stairs and laid a hand on the wooden rail he'd installed himself. Solid oak, sanded and sealed by hand, when his wife started losing her balance during chemo. She never let him call it a handicap rail. She said it was love, measured in inches. Now he gripped it with both hands, still sturdy, still his. But each surface in the house felt like borrowed time now, like his name was only penciled on the deed instead of signed in ink. He went to the hall closet, opened the small cedar box on the top shelf, and pulled out the manila folder he hadn't touched since the funeral. Inside was the property deed, county seal still clear, date still legible. Lionel Gaines, sole owner. He stared at it for a long time. "Still mine," he said quietly. The smell of cedar stayed in his hands as he picked up the phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found Renee Thompson. She wasn't just a real estate attorney. She was the one who'd helped them with the medical paperwork when his wife first got sick. Kind, methodical, and the kind of voice you wanted reading legal language. He hesitated before tapping call. "Mr. Gaines," Renee said when she picked up, cheerful but crisp. "I need to ask a favor," he said. "I've got some papers I want you to look at. I think my daughter's planning something I don't understand yet." He hated saying that out loud, hated more that it was true. "I can take a look," she said gently. "Send me photos of the deed, front and back. We'll start with facts, not fear." Her words settled him. He took careful pictures and sent them. A minute later, his phone chimed with her reply. "Got it. I'll pull the official title and tax records today. Call you tomorrow." Meanwhile, across town, life rolled on louder. At Aunt Delilah D. Brown's salon, the air buzzed with dryers and the latest city gossip. Aunt D., his sister-in-law, worked the chair with her usual flair, flipping through curls like stories. A client mentioned a new buyer snapping up homes. "Says his name's Knox," the woman said. "All cash, no banks, offers same day." Dee paused. That name sounded familiar. One of the stylists had mentioned it last week, someone looking at property near Lionel Street. "Cash moves fast," Dee said slowly, "but not always clean." She made a mental note. She'd be watching. The next morning, Lionel sat in Renee's office. No windows, no art, just stacks of files and a small jazz speaker playing low near the back. He wore his best jacket and brought the original deed with him, even though she already had the pictures. Legal documents confused him sometimes, the jargon layered thick, but Renee broke it down like a good teacher. She slid 2 papers across the desk. Title search shows one name only, yours. No mortgage, no HOA lien. You do have 1/4 of your annual property tax unpaid, but nothing major. That's straight from county records. He nodded, heart settling a little. "What if someone tried to stop me from selling?" he asked. "Only someone with a legal interest in the property can file an injunction," Renee said. "They'd have to be on the deed or prove you're mentally unfit, and even that wouldn't stick without evidence. So unless they're on the title," she added, "the court won't freeze a thing." He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Then he told her what he heard. Not everything, just enough. Renee looked up from her notes. "Do you want to keep the house or keep your dignity?" He didn't answer right away. "I want to keep myself," he said, finally. Back in Midtown, in their condo kitchen, Simone and Malcolm sat at the table, both staring at an email labeled Demand Letter. Their bank, citing the high LTV ratio, loan to value, was demanding more collateral. Simone read aloud, "Loan to value is now 87%. Additional backing required within 10 business days." That meant they owed too much for what the condo was worth. Anything over 80% made lenders nervous. 90% was panic territory. "We could use your dad's house," Malcolm said. "Just to back it. It's temporary." Simone shook her head. Her eyes drifted to a framed photo on the wall, her parents on their wedding day. "I'm not stealing from him," she said. "You're saving us," Malcolm replied. Lionel, meanwhile, sat at his kitchen table, listing every item in the house. Furniture, boxes, picture frames, each line a small surrender. The list would serve as an inventory, but it was more than that. It was a letting go exercise, a reckoning. He folded the paper, slid it next to the deed in the cedar box. "Math never lied to me," he muttered. That night, he got an email from Renee with a checklist, proof of funds from any buyer, an as-is contract, 7-day due diligence window, 14-day closing, independent escrow account, two-step verification for any wire transfer, post-occupancy agreement, final walkthrough with photos. It was a lot, but each item felt like protection. He printed the list and pinned it to his fridge. In a voicemail, Renee added, "Tomorrow I'll request the HOA status letter and line up escrow. We'll keep it clean." Late that night, Lionel stood in front of the fridge, rereading the checklist. Across town, Simone stared at her laptop, the demand letter still open. Neither of them slept. Both sat with a version of the same silence. Pride, fear, distance. "If they plan my ending," Lionel said into the room, "I'll write it my way." He pulled Renee's card from his wallet, slid it into the front pocket of his jacket. Light from the fridge reflected off the embossed lettering as the door shut quietly behind him. The first move was made. Proof and planning came next. Quiet, careful, but this time under his terms. The next morning, Lionel was finishing his coffee when his phone rang. The name Renee Thompson blinked on the screen. He answered quickly. "Mr. Gaines," she said, voice steady. "A new document was filed on your property in the county system. It's marked as a refinance update, digital signature included." He didn't speak, just listened. "The signature matches your old notary file from when your wife filed power of attorney," she continued. "Same digital pattern, same scan source." His fingers tightened around the mug. "I'd like your permission to trace the IP address," Renee said. "It'll tell us where the login came from." Lionel nodded, then remembered she couldn't see him. "Yes, do it." A pause, followed by keyboard clacks through speakerphone. The sound went on longer than he expected. "This file didn't come from your home network, Mr. Gaines," she said finally. "It came from Midtown." Lionel said nothing. He set the coffee down and grabbed his keys. 20 minutes later, he sat in Renee's office again, the forged file on her screen. His own signature stared back at him, flattened and precise, copied line for line. Seeing it used that way felt cold, not like betrayal, more like theft in polite formatting. He studied it a few more seconds, then looked away. "That's enough proof," he said quietly. Renee hit print. The copier cast light across his face as it whirred. She stapled the pages and wrote today's date in the corner. "No accusations yet," she said. "Just evidence. We log everything." She paused, then turned serious. "I know this is hard, but if you want to act, we can control the terms. You don't need permission to sell. Just a clean process." Lionel didn't answer right away. The house wasn't just walls and property. It had been his anchor through retirement, through grief, through his daughter growing up, and then drifting out of reach. Selling it felt like pulling up the last root. He looked at the paperwork again. Then he spoke, voice clear. "We sell on our terms, cash, clean, fast." Renee nodded and got to work. She reached out to a buyer she'd already heard rumors about. Marcus Knox, a local investor known for moving quickly with cash. No banks, no games. But he wanted transparency. Renee sent him a full package, copy of the deed, proof that the title was unencumbered, and confirmation of no mortgage or HOA lien. She also outlined a standard fast-track deal, 7-day due diligence for inspection, then closing in 14. Knox responded within the hour. "As is conditions fine," he said on the phone. "Send escrow details." Renee picked an escrow agent she trusted. Neutral, local, verified. Lionel worried about scams. She walked him through it. "Two-step verification only," she said, sealing the printed file in a folder. "No texts, no new phone numbers. You call the office number from the paperwork to confirm every wire. That's old school safety." At the salon, Aunt Dee was picking up on the wind. Clients whispered about a house going into contract on short notice. "Somebody's selling quick," one woman said, while checking her reflection. Heard it's cash only, no appraisals. Dee didn't say much, just kept snipping and blowing. But after her last appointment, she stepped into the back and sent Lionel a short voice message. "The street got ears, baby. Keep yours closed until that ink's dry." Lionel listened, then deleted the message. He trusted her to hold the line. That night, he pulled out an old HUD-1 form from his filing cabinet, the Housing and Urban Development sheet from when they bought the house decades ago. He compared it to the new figures Renee had sent. The market had changed. The value now sat at $890,000. He picked up a pencil and wrote one line beneath the numbers. Value, $890,000. Peace, priceless. A low hum from the radio drifted into the room. Amazing Grace was playing again. He didn't sing, but he let it play. At the condo, Simone noticed the shift. Her father's texts had gotten short. Nothing harsh, just formal, cold. She sat on the edge of the bed, rereading a message he'd sent that morning. "All good here. Hope you're well." Malcolm entered the room, holding his laptop. "Need your signature. We finalized the bank forms tonight." Simone looked at him, her eyes tired. "You're overthinking," Malcolm said. She signed, but her hand shook. "Maybe I'm finally thinking," she replied. Back at Renee's office, Lionel watched as she sealed the forged refinance printout in a large envelope. The IP trace went inside, too. She marked it, if needed. "What if Simone pushes back later?" Lionel asked. "Then we open this," Renee said. "Facts protect you." He nodded. "Then let the truth sleep until it's called." She slid the envelope into a drawer. Outside, the day had started shifting toward evening. Lionel stepped into the last light of the afternoon, copy of the deed in one hand, checklist in the other. The air was cool. The train horn echoed faintly in the distance, same as always. Tomorrow would bring the next step, listing photos, formal inspections, paperwork moving fast. But for now, he had all the proof he needed, and a plan that was finally his. The movers arrived just before noon. Simone had scheduled them without telling Lionel, framing it in her head as necessary. If the house was going to be used to help secure the Midtown condo loan, even temporarily, then they needed to make it presentable. Decluttering, she called it. Malcolm had pushed for the earliest appointment available. Boxes were stacked in the living room, some labeled donate, others left open with family photos half visible. An old recliner was already wrapped in plastic. One mover carried a box marked Dad's office. Another set down a bin of loose photos next to the door. A smaller one read Mom's journals. That's when Aunt Dee walked in. She didn't knock, just stepped into the room and froze. The sharp scrape of boxes against hardwood made her look toward the stack by the stairs. Her eyes locked on the box with the journals. Her sister's handwriting peeked through the top. She walked over and placed her hand firmly on it. "You call this cleaning or erasing?" she asked. Simone turned from the kitchen, startled. "Aunt Dee, it's just old stuff. We're clearing out for..." "For what?" Dee asked. "He dead?" Simone opened her mouth, then shut it again. Malcolm stayed outside, talking with one of the movers. From across the street, Mr. Henry stepped onto his porch. He squinted at the scene, then pulled out his phone and started recording. "For insurance?" he muttered. Malcolm saw him and waved a hand. "Ignore that, guys. Just keep going." Henry didn't move. "Never hurts to have receipts," he said, still filming. Inside, Simone had stepped into the dining room. Her hand hovered over the wall, just beneath a wedding photo of her parents. The same one she'd glanced at in the condo days earlier. Now, the frame looked different. It tilted slightly, like it had been bumped. From the yard, Malcolm's voice rose. "We're losing daylight, babe. Let's go." She touched the photo, steadying it, then whispered, "I'm not stealing from him." Then quieter, "Just protecting what's ours." Back in Renee's office, Lionel was finishing signatures on the initial disclosures. His phone buzzed. The motion alert from his home camera had triggered. He opened the app and saw Dee standing firm in front of a moving truck, arms crossed, mouth moving fast. The movers looked uncomfortable. He watched for 10 seconds, then texted her, "Let them take nothing. Police if needed." Behind him, the printer hummed. "You good?" Renee asked. "Just collecting more truth," Lionel said. Later that afternoon, Renee and the buyer's inspector arrived at the house for a scheduled walkthrough. Boxes were everywhere, but nothing looked stolen or broken, just out of place. Dee and Mr. Henry stayed to witness. Renee had asked them to sign the inspection form, just in case anything was challenged later. The inspector took photos, clicked through checklists, noted items by room. Dee stood near the fireplace, arms folded. Henry watched the inspector's screen. "Photos logged," the inspector said, signing. "Signatures noted." An hour later, Malcolm received a call on his cell. It was the title company. They were calling to verify seller identity and confirm closing protocol. "Sorry, what seller?" Malcolm asked. The agent explained. Lionel had entered into a signed contract to sell the house to Marcus Knox, with escrow already opened and closing scheduled in under 2 weeks. Malcolm ended the call quickly. He didn't tell Simone. Instead, he stepped outside, phone in hand. "Send me the injunction form tonight," he said to someone on the other end. The next morning, he showed up at Renee's office. He didn't make an appointment, just walked in and waited until she was available. "I want a delay," he said. "This sale needs review. There's a family situation here." Renee listened without reacting. Then she pulled a folder from her drawer. "Mr. Ortiz," she said, "without ownership or recorded lien, the court has no reason to freeze the transaction. Emotion isn't jurisdiction." Malcolm didn't reply. That night, Simone showed up at Lionel's door. Her eyes were red, but her voice held. "Just 3 months," she said. "Please." Inside, the kettle had started to whistle. He moved slowly, turned off the burner, and let the silence settle. "I gave you a lifetime," he said. He poured tea for her anyway, set it on the table. She didn't touch it. He slid an envelope toward her. Inside was a copy of a cognitive test Renee had advised him to take, an independent evaluation to confirm he was of sound mind. "This says I'm competent," Lionel said, watching her. "So my choice stands." Simone looked down. Her hands trembled near the cup, but she didn't speak. Outside, rain started. She left soon after. In the car, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Renee, just a short clip, audio only. Malcolm's voice. "We'll use his scan. Just tweak the file and upload it through Midtown. No one checks these things." The message ended. Underneath it, Renee had typed, "This is the man you're protecting?" Simone stared at the screen. The rain tapped harder on the windshield. She didn't hit reply. Inside, Lionel sat back down at the table. The final sale documents were in front of him now. His signature flowed across the page, line by line. He didn't rush. From the radio, Amazing Grace played quietly. "A house ain't heaven," he said to himself, "but freedom's close." The next morning, the movers were gone. The lawn was empty, the driveway clear. Birds moved across the power lines. Somewhere behind the houses, a train pushed through the early light. The sale clock had started, closing in 14 days. Emotion reckoning in 7. The Alta statement came by email at 8:12 a.m. Renee had titled it clearly, "Settlement Breakdown, Final Preview." Lionel opened it at the kitchen table, the same spot he'd done budgets for decades. The American Land Title Association format laid out everything: property tax balance, title fees, transfer charges, broker credits, escrow disbursement. The net proceeds were listed at the bottom. He printed a copy and placed it next to the original HUD form from when he and his wife first bought the house. The numbers felt cold, but accurate. That was enough. He reached for his pencil, tapped it once on the margin, then underlined the net figure. "Equations clean," he muttered. The printer stopped. The gospel station hummed faintly behind him. A few minutes later, Renee called. "Quick reminder," she said. "When it's time to wire funds, verify by phone. No texts, no links. You call the escrow line we already used." "Understood," Lionel said. She paused. "Old school safety," she added. He took a sticky note and wrote her number on it in block letters, then stuck it on the fridge next to the walk-through checklist. The basics still worked. They always had. Later that morning, Aunt Dee pulled up in her Civic. She was taking him to the credit union to open a new account, one dedicated to holding the sale proceeds. A small step, but essential. Lionel had insisted on avoiding his main bank. Too many linked names, too much history. Inside the branch, the clerk was polite, but thorough. "Any other authorized signers?" she asked. "No," Lionel replied. "Do you expect incoming wires over $100,000 in the next 14 days? "Yes." "From a personal or commercial source?" "Personal sale, residential property." The questions kept coming. He answered each with patience. The clerk handed him a folder at the end. "Welcome to First Civic Credit Union," she said. Aunt Dee's phone rang just as they exited. Her gospel ringtone played faintly. She silenced it and nudged him. "First step to freedom, baby." Meanwhile, Simone sat in her car in Midtown, parked just outside a quiet church lot. Her phone was open to a real estate site. She hadn't meant to look, but something pulled her in. When she saw the listing tagged under contract, her breath caught. There was a photo of the front step she used to sit on, a wide shot of the kitchen, the same counters where her mother had taught her to make cornbread. And beneath it all, the pending sale status. Her father hadn't told her it was this far. Shame tightened in her chest, then panic. She stayed parked, engine off, as rain tapped the windshield. Eventually, she said it out loud. "How did we get here?" She didn't call Malcolm. She didn't call anyone. Elsewhere, Malcolm was trying something different. He dialed Knox directly, claimed to be a competing buyer, asked if the inspection could be delayed, said he had an offer to top it, all cash. But Knox wasn't new to this. He recorded the call, then hung up and forwarded the audio file to Renee. The message was short. The subject line said it all. "Nice try, slick." That afternoon, Renee met Lionel and Aunt Dee back at the house. Rain clouds pressed low, and the walk-through photos had to be done quickly. The inspector couldn't reschedule. Inside, furniture had already been moved to one side. Blank outlines marked where photos used to hang. The camera picked up faint dust trails. Renee snapped carefully, noting each room's condition. Aunt Dee watched closely. "Proof's prettier than rumor," she said. Renee nodded and finished logging everything. Every photo mattered now. Back at the office, they called the escrow officer together. On speaker, they confirmed the account details one more time. A minor routing number mismatch showed up, off by a single digit. Renee caught it. They corrected it using the original paperwork. "Verified," the officer said. "Two-step protocol complete." That night, Lionel sat at his desk, writing slowly in his notebook. A draft of a letter to Simone. Just one line stood out. "You can't own what you disrespect." He looked at the sentence for a long time, then folded the paper without signing, tucked it into a drawer. "Maybe later," he said. His phone rang around 9. It was Malcolm. "Dad, let's talk," he said, voice softer than usual. "We never meant for things to get Lionel didn't answer. "You'll regret," he hung up. The dial tone faded into the distance as a train passed behind the house. The next morning, Lionel woke early, dressed neatly, put on his wedding ring, folded the deed copy and tucked it into his jacket pocket, added his notepad. That was all he carried. He walked to the front door, turned the key once, and paused. "Time to graduate," he said quietly, then stepped outside. Renee met him at her office with the full stack of closing documents. Knox and the escrow agent were already there. Lionel listened carefully as she summarized each page. Tax lines, seller credits, legal disclosures, no surprises, no blanks. His hand moved slowly but steadily. Signature by signature, the house passed out of his name. When they reached the final page, Renee spoke without looking up. "Congratulations, Mr. Gaines. Clear close." The printer ran again. Papers slid into a final envelope marked Seller Net Sheet. On the way out, the gospel station was still playing low in the background. Amazing Grace faded in, soft and familiar. Lionel stood quietly, hand resting on the envelope. The sale was done. Peace had been bought, not with forgiveness, but with precision. The morning after closing, the new keys turned quietly in the lock. Knox's crew didn't make a scene. A white van idled in the driveway while two men unloaded staging materials, neutral rugs, light furniture, a small bundle of rolled canvas prints. Lionel had already told them he would be out by the next day. Legally, the 3-day post-occupancy addendum gave him until Monday, but he wanted to leave on his own schedule. "Boxes are still in the back bedroom," he said as the lead crew member stepped inside. The man nodded, didn't question it. "I'll have them out by morning." Door closed behind them. Papers rustled in the front hallway. Inventory notes, walk-through sheets. Lionel stood by the kitchen, hand resting on the counter. For a moment, he said nothing. "It's all yours now," he finally said. 2 hours later, another car came up the street. Simone and Malcolm stepped out fast. She was gripping her phone. Malcolm had his keys in hand before they reached the steps. Simone tapped in the old door code. Nothing. Malcolm tried his key. It turned, but didn't unlock. He tried again. No click. "Something's wrong," Simone said. Malcolm stepped back, checking the lock. Then she knocked, once, twice, then hard. "Daddy," she called. "Open up." No answer. "Daddy, please, it's me." Nothing moved inside. Through the narrow window, she could see light. Boxes were gone. The space looked clean. Her eyes dropped. An envelope was taped carefully to the center of the door. "To my daughter." She stared at it. Malcolm reached for it, but she pulled it away. The flap tore as she opened it. Inside, a single sheet. Lionel's handwriting. Small, controlled. "If you thought I held this house against you, you never knew me at all. I didn't keep it to measure you. I kept it because I still had breath in it. This choice isn't punishment, it's peace." Malcolm leaned over to read, scoffed. "Peace," he said. "You see what this is? He's making you feel guilty for not being perfect." Simone didn't answer. Malcolm yanked the letter from her hand, crumpled it. "This is what pride looks like," he snapped. "You wouldn't have debts if you'd let me use his name earlier." She looked at him, stunned. "So you did use it?" That stopped him for half a second. The front door still wouldn't open. He threw the crumpled letter to the porch and stormed down the steps. From across the street, Mr. Henry was already recording. Phone up, steady hands, no words. Malcolm shouted toward him, "Turn that off!" Henry didn't flinch. Simone didn't stop the camera this time. She didn't look away when Malcolm slammed the car door and peeled off. Henry lowered the phone. "Let the tape tell it," he said, more to the wind than to her. Simone stepped away from the front. The side door was unlocked, likely missed during staging. She slipped inside. The air was cool. The house was empty. She walked slowly through the hall. The frames were gone, but their outlines stayed, pale shapes on the paint where sun hadn't reached. Kitchen smelled faintly of cleaning spray. She made it to the living room and sat down on the floor. There was nothing left to sit on. She looked around. No sound but the low creak of the house and wind tapping against the back screen. "I only wanted to save us," she said to the floor. No one answered. Across town, Lionel unlocked the door to his new place. A small one-bedroom apartment above a print shop. Bright windows, clean walls, no steps to climb. He set the kettle on the stove and opened one of the moving boxes. Inside, a framed photo of Simone when she was little, missing her front teeth and holding a prize math trophy. He placed it gently on a shelf above the stove. In the top drawer of the kitchen cabinet, he stored the sealed envelope from the credit union, proof of funds from the sale, account now active, labeled and dated. Kettle began to whistle. "New math," he said aloud. "One loss, one gain." The phone rang. It was Renee. "Wires cleared. Funds are secure," she said. "All paperwork uploaded. You're officially done." He nodded, though she couldn't see it. "Appreciate everything, Renee. You're the one who did the hard part. You taught me law can sound like mercy." She laughed softly. "Dinner invites still open?" "Absolutely," he said. They hung up. That afternoon, Aunt Dee stopped by. She didn't knock, just held out a small potted fern. "From the old yard," she said. "I snipped it before they started digging." Lionel looked at it. "I don't need—" "Didn't say you did," Dee said. "But plants need light, same as people." He took the pot and set it by the window. Dee nodded once, then left without another word. 3 days passed. On the 4th, Lionel opened his front door and found a small plant resting beside the welcome mat. Same kind as the ones from their yard years ago. Tucked beneath it was a note on plain paper. "This one likes morning sun." He stood still for a while before picking it up. Inside, he set it on the ledge next to Simone's photo and the envelope marked "Seller Net Sheet." His hands lingered there, slow and careful. "Legacy's not land," he said quietly. "It's clarity." Outside, the train passed in the distance. The kettle began to whistle again. He didn't rush. Later, he sat by the window, coffee in hand, the same photo looking back at him. The apartment didn't echo. It held. At Aunt Dee's salon, the chairs spun a little slower that week. Not from lack of gossip, there was plenty, but from the kind of pause that comes when the story starts hitting too close to home. "You hear about that retired teacher?" one client said, flipping through a magazine she wasn't reading. "Sold his house overnight, like that." "Ruthless," another chimed in. "Just booted his own daughter." "Nah," someone across the room cut in. "I heard he caught her trying to snatch it from under him. Man did what he had to." Dee didn't interrupt at first. She clipped, fluffed, and let them run their mouths until the dryer buzzed quiet. Then she leaned in close to the mirror. "He didn't sell for money," she said. "He sold for peace." The room stilled for half a second. "Peace cost near 900 grand, the magazine lady muttered. Dee turned the chair, set the dryer again. "Worth every penny." Across town, Simone sat in a conference room too cold for comfort. The banker across from her wore that apologetic smile, flat but practiced. "Without collateral, your LTV ratio's still too high," he said, tapping the form. Simone looked down at the numbers. Nothing had moved since last week, still upside down. "Right," she said, sliding the paper back. "Then it's time to lower the value of my pride." She stood, shook his hand, and walked out. That same day, Malcolm's brokerage called him into the office. By noon, his license was suspended. By 2, Renee's recorded phone call, him posing as a fake buyer, had been submitted to the board. He stormed into Simone's building, eyes wild. "You have to fix this," he hissed. "Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them She didn't flinch. "You forged a name," she said. "Now live with yours." She walked past him, never looked back. Lionel didn't hear about it that day. He didn't need to. His mornings were simple now. Coffee at 6, notebook at 7, train schedule pinned to the wall. But empty hours still tried to creep in. Dee noticed. "You keep counting ceiling tiles," she said. "You'll start naming them." So he called the local community center. By the following Monday, he had a folding table, a stack of pencils, and a dozen kids who needed help with fractions. "Numbers don't judge," he told Dee when she stopped by. Renee came through one last time that week, final HUD-1 statement in hand. They sat at the kitchen table of his new place, side by side. "All disbursements match," she said. "Debts cleared, taxes done, escrow released." Lionel stared at the page, columns and lines and figures, precise as ever. "Looks like math really saved you," she smiled. "Maybe grace did," he replied. 2 days later, he noticed the plant Simone had left by the door had sprouted a new leaf. He thought about calling. Instead, he got the watering can. "Morning sun," he said. "Just like you said." That weekend, Renee showed up again. This time, not with paperwork, but a handful of flyers. "You're getting popular at the center," she said. "They want to list you as a permanent volunteer." Lionel laughed. "I'm too old to start again." She tilted her head. "You just proved you can end right." Dee hosted dinner that Sunday. Roast chicken, collard greens, cornbread, and peach cobbler that somehow always tasted better from her kitchen. Renee came. A few students from the center, too. Lionel poured iced tea and passed plates. There was one empty chair. He didn't say whose it was, but when the glasses clinked, he raised his cup anyway. "To endings that stay kind." Simone showed up at the salon after hours the next night. The lights were low, Dee sweeping up. She didn't knock, just slipped in quietly. Dee didn't say a word, just pointed her to the chair. "I didn't stop him," Simone said finally. "When I saw the forged form, I panicked. I told myself it wasn't real." Curling iron hissed. Clock ticked. "You can't fix the past," Dee said, setting the iron down. "But you can face it." Simone nodded. Her hands were in her lap. 2 days later, her phone buzzed with a message from the community center. A photo of Lionel surrounded by a few kids, all holding math worksheets. She stared at it for a long time, then typed, "Proud of you, Dad." She hovered, deleted, typed again, sent. Lionel read it during his break, sitting on the edge of a metal chair, coffee in one hand, pencil in the other. He didn't overthink it. He just typed back, "Boundaries teach love." He set the phone down. Outside, the train passed, steady as ever. That night, Lionel sat on Dee's porch. Kids ran up and down the sidewalk, laughing between bites of peach cobbler. He watched them for a while, cup warm in his hand. Tomorrow, he knew, one more knock would come. One more visit that would ask if forgiveness could be spoken, not just implied. But for tonight, he let the porch settle quiet. He'd already learned which endings were worth keeping. Morning light crept through the curtains in Lionel Gaines's new apartment. The kettle hissed. Birdsong filtered in from the open window. He moved quietly, as though testing the air. Then came a soft knock at the door, one he didn't expect, but recognized immediately. He opened it to find his daughter, Lionel Gaines, standing there with a bakery box in her hands. Her expression froze at the same moment his did. They both stood still, long enough that the moment stretched. "Coffee's ready, if you are," she said, voice steady but gentle. He stepped back and motioned for her to enter. No words passed between them as he closed the door behind her, set the box on the small table by the window, and reached for mugs. Steam rose from the kettle. They poured coffee. A slice of peach pie waited. They sat across from each other in silence. The room held the hush of everything unsaid, and both of them felt it. The guilt hung there, Simone's for the scheme, his for the distance, but neither moved straight into it. They just drank and let the coffee ground them. Finally, Simone cleared her throat. "I was scared, not greedy," she said. The sentence came quieter than she intended. She looked down at the pie plate. Lionel watched her, the steam drifting between them. He didn't correct her or argue. He pressed his lips together, then said, "Fear makes thieves of the honest." She met his eyes then, a long, shaky breath. The pie fork paused. They shared the bite in silence. When he spoke next, his voice held both things, past and future. He handed her an envelope. She took it and looked at it uncertainly. It was a copy of the seller net sheet, the detailed summary of sale proceeds and fees from the house he sold. Simone looked up, brows knit. She thought it was a rebuke, a way of saying, "See what you cost us." But then Lionel touched a note scribbled at the bottom in pencil. "Clarity. This is your inheritance." Her face changed. Recognition. A kind of relief. She looked back at him. "That's all I ever meant to leave," he said softly. Tears welled in her eyes. She laughed through them, something raw, unsteady. She nodded and said, "I understand now." They sat a while longer without needing more words. Outside, a train horn sounded faint in the distance. Later that day, they drove to the old street where the house had been, the one where Lionel and his wife had built so many years. The new family had moved in, fresh paint, new mailbox. The yard had children playing on it. The bicycle bell rang. The wind moved through the tree limbs. Lionel parked on the curb. Simone sat beside him. He looked out the window and waved when the children raced past on trikes. "Houses should keep laughing," he said. Simone watched him, the memory of so many years pressed into one moment. Back in town, at the community center where Lionel now tutored math, there was a small ceremony. A plaque awaited him. Volunteer tutor, community center math night. He resisted the attention. He didn't like being the center of a spotlight. But when the director called his name, he stood, shook hands, accepted it. Simone was there, seated in the back row. When the applause rose, he caught her eyes. The director introduced him. "He teaches math, but he's really teaching peace." The room filled with an extra beat of acknowledgement. Lionel nodded without looking grand. He accepted the plaque quietly. After the ceremony, Renee Thompson, the real estate attorney who had guided him through everything, came over. She told him she'd accepted a new job in Savannah. The news hit him with a calm pang. He handed her a small envelope, handwritten, for saving more than property. She laughed softly. "You saved yourself. I just notarized it." They nodded. No more words needed. Over the weekend, Simone showed up again, this time at the community center where Lionel taught. She volunteered to lead a small session on personal budgeting for the parents of the students. The chalkboard squeaked. The kids giggled when she slipped up. Some parents exchanged whispers about that daughter of his. She ignored them. "Rule 1, never gamble with what you love," she told the group. She met eyes. Didn't hide the tremor in her voice. That night, Simone wrote a letter to her late mother. She sat at her kitchen table in the condo, now empty of illusions. Her pen moved across paper. "I finally kept the house safe by letting it go. Tears smudged the ink. She folded the letter and left it at the church's candle stand. The next evening, father and daughter sat together on Lionel's modest porch. The kettle was off. The sun set slow. A train passed in the distance. "Next spring, I'll plant a garden here," Simone said, voice light but genuine. Lionel looked over at her. He lifted his mug. The plant she'd left him earlier already sat on the window ledge inside, thriving. He smiled quietly. "Make sure it gets morning sun," he said. He meant more than the plant. They sat in the quiet for a few minutes longer. No need for more talk. The moment held them. Inside, on the shelf, beside the framed photo of young Simone holding that math trophy and the plaque from the community center, sat the plant's new leaves reaching upward. He hummed softly, "Amazing Grace." The day closed with wheel rhythm of the train beyond the tracks, and in that lull, he understood. He lost a house, gained a boundary, and taught love its math: subtract pride, add clarity. The morning light settled gently over Atlanta. Life didn't stop. It moved on, steadily, quietly. The end. What would you have done in Lionel's place, watching your legacy tested, your name misused, and your peace pushed to the edge? If you've ever had to protect something sacred, a home, a memory, a boundary, share your story in the comments. You're not alone. Please comment 1 if you liked the video, comment 0 if you didn't, and feel free to share why so I can keep improving the content for you. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Your support means more than you know.